Thank you for joining us today and welcome back to WAMS Webinar Wednesdays. Kathleen Kvitek, WAMS Director of Training, is joining us to discuss internal security. So today we will cover shared devices, BYOD policies, and if you don't know what that is, we'll get right into it, staff training, physical security, and a few more best practices. If you're not too familiar with WAMS, I'll share a little bit about us. We have been providing law firms and small businesses with computer consulting and support services since '74. We continue our reputation for quality and service today by installing and proactively maintaining computer systems, as well as providing technology solutions for hundreds of law firms and businesses. If you have any questions, please send them to info@wamsinc.com. That's info@wamsinc.com, and we will address those questions in a timely manner after the presentation. So let's go ahead and get going. First, let's talk a little about shared devices and some key measures to have in place when employees use shared devices. I can't stress this enough. Individual user accounts, that is so important so you know who is doing what. Unique passwords to all of those accounts that expire in 90 days, especially if, and I don't recommend this, but if you are using a shared device and not all team members have the same security or same role, and there are kind of some sensitive things that some of them should or should not be seeing or that need to be protected, this is the best way to make sure that we don't have those risks. And of course, have lock settings to lock after X amount of time of inactivity. I personally would say the shorter the better, only because if you have to jump up for something, you know, God forbid something happens and you have to run out of your office for a moment, or, you know, as some of us do, you just get a little excited about something and you forget to lock, you have that extra security measure in place. So even if you do leave your station vulnerable for a minute, it won't be for very long and you will be more protected. It's also important to know all about using Wi-Fi and hotspots, you know, on shared laptops, and make sure that you're using a secure connection or using your phone's hotspot. And again, can't stress this enough, have a clear usage policy in place. What is allowed, what isn't, what applications can be accessed, which ones cannot, you know, things of that nature. Know that your browser history is likely to be monitored, and even in incognito mode. And if you don't know what that is, we'll explain that in a second. Websites that are malicious or harmful websites are still harmful, malicious websites. It doesn't change just because you go into this incognito mode, very different from like a safe browsing. And we'll touch on this a little bit more, but it is important to understand that cloud workspaces are always an option as well. But if you're curious about incognito mode or you know, private browsing, for those of you not familiar, incognito mode is an option in Google Chrome. I know other browsers, I believe, call it a private window. You know, we hope that you aren't trying to hide anything, and if you don't know what this is, then we definitely know that you're not. Jokes aside, it is a helpful tool when you are on a shared device and are maybe surprising someone with a gift and do not want them to know what you're searching for or what you're doing. But be aware that, as it states clearly here, your activity can still be visible as far as websites you visit. Your employer or school will be able to see this. Your internet service provider, because they're connecting you there, they can still see what you're doing on the back end, because it's a measure that goes kind of past what you're doing and into the bigger picture. So again, a little bit more about cloud workspaces. Now Kathleen will dive a little deeper, but it's important to know that when you're working on a shared device, cloud workspaces are a great option simply because you have your full desktop. It's like accessing a second computer from your device. Nothing has to be saved locally. You don't have to save anything with any sensitive information. You can work securely. And with a cloud workspace, the really cool thing is that your Wi-Fi or network connection does not matter because it cannot be compromised, at least on our workspace, because it is fully encrypted, which is great. So next, let's talk a little about BYOD policies, not to be confused with BYOB, which can be equally important, but I digress. Anyway, simply, BYOD stands for Bring Your Own Device. We are seeing this more and more. It is a trend in all businesses where people are bringing their devices in, laptops, and even accessing email on your phone is considered a part of a Bring Your Own Device policy and measure. So it's really important to have a BYOD security policy in place. Encrypt business data stored on personal devices with strong encryption. Full device encryption is best. If that isn't feasible, all business data should be stored in encrypted folders on any device. It's also very important to routinely update hardware and apps to the latest versions to mitigate the risk of someone exploiting a known vulnerability. You also want to make sure that devices are registered before they connect to the company network. This will allow your network administrators, or sometimes us, to detect unauthorized devices on the network. And it's also very important to be aware of government regulations, licensing requirements, and industry standards. I know for many of our clients, HIPAA is a big one, and that's really important when it comes to security. And we will be discussing on our next webinar a GDPR-like policy that is going to be hitting California effective in the beginning of 2020. So let's just take a look at what it looks like when you do have a cybersecurity policy in place. This chart is from the Clutch 2018 IT Security Survey. Clutch is an independent platform that collects data and provides it to companies in a bunch of different categories. And so you can see here, what are these employees accessing on company-approved devices? Mostly email and calendars, shared documents, proprietary company apps, company messaging. If they are accessing anything else, it is very minimal. And so, another great thing about having a policy like this in place where you are monitoring activity is increasing productivity. And of course, security awareness training should be mandatory to your BYOD policy and internal security policy in general. Kathleen will dive deeper in just a minute, but a few key takeaways here are, in both policies, whether you're working on a shared device or bringing your own device, it's important to report lost or stolen devices instantly. Ideally, you'd like to be able to access those and wipe those immediately, but if not, reporting it right away so they can get to the bottom of it and make sure that whoever has that device does not have access to the most important information. Also, minimize the use of personal email accounts for business emails. I know I myself am super guilty of that being an issue when I reply to something on my phone and it accidentally sends from one of my multiple inboxes, or multiple email accounts, I should say, and it just kind of gets messy. So try to be good about that. Usually it's not too much of a problem on a larger device like a computer or even an iPad, but still something to be aware of. Again, I can't stress this enough. Updates are key to making sure that you do not exploit any vulnerabilities or have any vulnerabilities, and be careful of application access. And before Kathleen tells us a little bit more about security training, I had to share with you all that a colleague of mine just dealt with a phishing, or actually a whaling scam, last week. So the difference is that the email was spoofing the president of the company, and of course I will not share any information on who this colleague is or the company, because everyone goes through this and it's not fun. Long story short, here's what happened. This employee received an email spoofing the president of his company, and what made it even worse is that the president of his company does not operate in the same state that he does. And the email basically stated that he was stuck in a meeting with some clients, that it was very important, that he needed to run to the nearest Best Buy, purchase 3 Google Play gift cards at $500 each, scratch everything off to reveal all of the information, take photos of the front and back, and send them to him as quickly as possible. Now, this sounds a little bit familiar, doesn't it? If any of you tuned into last month's webinar, Matt dealt with a very similar situation, and the difference was that Matt knew exactly what was going on and did not fall for it. But unfortunately, he just kind of lost his head. He wanted to be the hero, help his president out, save the day, as many people do. And so, had to share this, especially since it's so timely. It just happened last week. So, and also bear in mind, this employee had gone through all of his company's IT department's mandated training procedures, and it still happened. So if you think you've done enough security training, you could be wrong. It is important to stay in the know, keep up with it, and do refreshers every so often. And, much like happened in this situation, it's too easy to get caught up in wanting to help someone in a dire situation that can cause employees to just lose their heads. And, I'm happy to say that I believe they actually had insurance that covered this kind of situation, and everything worked out. This employee still has his job, but he learned a very, very valuable lesson, and many other members of the company also learned the importance of training and cybersecurity awareness, and you really have to always be on your toes. And now to dive a little bit deeper into security training, Kathleen is going to take over.
Thank you, Ashley, and welcome to all of you who are attending today. I would like to start by saying that most of our clients and attendees who are on this webinar today work for small or mid-size law firms or companies. And with that said, it is unlikely that most of you have a person or department dedicated to security. You either rely on your internal IT person or your IT provider, possibly us, WAMS, to handle your technology and your security needs. But we really need to start looking at security as a group effort. You really can't assume your current IT person or your IT provider can take on all of the potential and real security breaches that could be out there. Searching for and responding to internal breaches is more labor-intensive than maintaining a firewall. And system administrators don't have time to completely handle and monitor security threats and support your company's IT needs. What we often find, though, is that firms and decision makers will not always want to spend money on extra layers of security and training because there is a sense that the firewall and their IT person keeps their system and data safe. But you really can't offer enough training and education and discussion on security. It is just getting more and more prevalent, and it's going to continue, that the potential for security breaches are really out there. In many ways, the weakest point of security is actually the employees who use your system. Hackers don't have to find a way to breach your firewall because they are being let in accidentally by your employees. When you think about it, it is much easier to trick a human into giving out information and access to your network or giving away money than it is to create a virus. It's really a numbers game, and the numbers, unfortunately, are on the hacker side. For those of you who have attended our prior webinars, we have spoken about malicious web links and attachments as a common way for hackers to try to trick employees. And it only takes one person one time to get tricked, and then you have a potential security threat. You are at the mercy of your employees to recognize a security threat if a malicious email shows up in their inbox. And assuming the person who receives the malicious email recognizes that it is a threat, you are then again at their mercy to take proper steps. For example, a user who receives a potentially threatening email may be unsure of whether it is truly dangerous and may then forward it to someone else in the organization to get their opinion. But that person may then open the link or attachment because it came from a work colleague. So what you can do now is, and this is a suggestion for administrators and managers, is you can draft and share a very short and simple checklist regarding security. You can acknowledge in this email or this document the fact that there is a need for official policies and procedures to be put in place, but that this is a guideline to begin with. If you wait for a committee and approval of a new firm policy to begin the discussion of security or to put together an official document and procedure, it could take months and you could be missing a security situation. So the dialogue about security and the need for awareness should not be delayed by the need for official policies. And as I mentioned before, it really should be a group effort. So, speaking of remote employees and remote access, as we all know, the ability to work remotely is a major part of business, and the number of employees who will work remotely will only greatly continue to increase in the future. So with that said, unfortunately, that also increases security risks. For many firms and companies, there really is no system or policy in place for giving employees remote access. They come in with their own devices, a large array of personal devices with a variety of operating systems, which makes it really challenging for anybody to manage the same level of security on those devices. As Ashley mentioned, the whole BYOD concept is just part of life now, and it's really important to be speaking about and planning on how to protect yourselves from people's their own devices. And also, just not to forget to mention that you have another security issue potentially, because if you are bringing your own device, then there's that potential again of it being lost or stolen. So if you do not have clear guidelines and a policy in place, this is something you should put on your radar right away. And what you can do right now to begin the process is you can prepare a list of all employees with remote access. And not only should you have a list at your fingertips of everyone who has remote access, but you should also include what devices they use, and not just a simple, oh, John uses his phone and his home computer, but really specific details about what phone it is, what operating system, any details that you can have, so that you don't have to scramble at the last minute to get this information. And, if you are wondering why would I suggest that you create and maintain a list, it's going to help you when putting together new and stricter policies and guidelines for security. Again, as I said, you want to be able to access this information quickly if you need to discuss it, or if you need to speak to a specific employee or anybody about their use of remote access. And if you wind up working with a security expert, or if one of our engineers needs to talk to you or anybody at the firm about their remote access, they're going to want to be able to have this information also readily available. So if you don't already have a list, that is something that I suggest that you start pulling together right away. Historically, a lot of emphasis has been placed on keeping hackers out by having a good firewall. But since hackers are constantly looking for ways in and are finding them through employees' mistakes, we need to look at security from another perspective. And this also means to take a look at your internal security. If a hacker were to get through, what security measures do you have if they actually breach or make it through your firewall? A lot of hackers will go after an employee's personal computer because personal computers often have weak security or out-of-date security. So if you have an employee with a personal device with out-of-date or weak security, and then that employee connects to your company network, it's a possibility that the hacker can get into your network without anyone realizing it. This means you need to work towards having the best and most up-to-date antivirus in place on your internal network and computers as well. It also means monitoring remote users' devices to make sure they have the most up-to-date security patches and antivirus software. Another thing to consider is home networks. They should actually be updated on a regular basis. For example, if a home router is older than 5 years, it's really time to replace it with something more secure and probably faster. What you can do right now is begin educating your users about the need to keep virus software up to date on personal devices and computers, and let them know that home routers should be upgraded if they haven't done so recently. In one of our prior webinars, I talked about common sense coming into play when it comes to security. I mentioned that it is not a good practice to put your passwords on sticky notes or pieces of paper taped to monitors, walls, or lying around on your desks. And I'm sure we can all think of at least one person who does this, but this really needs to stop. Why bother to have a password if you put it on a sticky note on your monitor? And we also need to discuss having a clean desk a little bit further. As part of a security strategy, you should also be considering what risk your firm and clients are at if documents with private or sensitive information are laying around in plain sight. I know this can be tricky for our law firm clients as the legal industry is still so paper-oriented. And it would, I am sure, be difficult to mandate that no documents with client information be left out on desks overnight and on weekends. But it is still something to discuss when putting together a security policy. I'm sure you can all think of someone who has piles of documents stacked on their desks and on the floor. And if these documents contain private or sensitive information, this is more than just a messy office, it is a security risk. As I mentioned, security is somewhat of a common sense topic, but leaving sensitive information available for anyone to see or take is a security issue that should not be overlooked when considering a strong security policy. As I mentioned, security is somewhat of a common sense topic, but leaving sensitive information available for anyone to see or take is a security issue that should not be overlooked when considering a strong security policy. What you can do right now is encourage client meetings to only be held in conference rooms where there are no papers lying around with sensitive information. Remind employees about not leaving documents laying around after hours. Discuss the security risks with employees who have documents laying around and offer to have another employee help them file and put away documents. You could also consider becoming paperless, or at least heading in that direction. Becoming completely paperless may not be a reality, but if this is something you or your firm has discussed, security is another reason to consider going paperless. I also want to bring a couple other potential risks to your attention. USB drives can also be a security risk. You may not realize this, but it is possible to put malware or viruses on USB drives. And even more surprising and a little bit scary is that there are known incidents of hackers leaving USB devices on the ground outside of buildings to try to trick people into loading the device. And many people will just do that to just see what's on the device, or possibly to try to determine who it belongs to and return it. So it's an innocent move to put a USB drive into your computer, but if there is a malware or something corrupted on it, it could cause problems. So you should have also some security for USB drives, and this should be part of your security policy as well. I mean, you can help the situation right away by making sure that antivirus software automatically scans a USB drive before it launches anything. You can also change your computer settings to not automatically launch or autoplay a USB device, and then the scan can run before something launches automatically. Additionally, you should also encourage staff to delete sensitive information from a USB drive once the data has been transferred, because a lot of times people bring USB devices back and forth in their bags and purses, and if it still has, sensitive information on it and it were to be lost or stolen, then you have a major security problem. And also be aware of the fact that mobile devices can contract malware through apps and unsecured networks, such as free Wi-Fi at airports. So this is another reason to make sure that security patches and antivirus software are loaded and up to date on all devices. Honest mistakes like sending sensitive files to the wrong address just can't be helped. I mean, things just happen. I mean, we've probably all emailed the wrong person accidentally because you have the names popping up automatically in your Outlook mail, and if you've attached a document or included information in that email that has sensitive information, it's an honest mistake that we can't do anything about it. So as our slide says, you can't patch human error. And again, mistakes are bound to happen. There just really isn't anything that we can do about that. No matter how many rules and how tight a security policy you have in place, a person can still make a mistake. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a security plan and policy in place. And if you do have one, it's a good time to start looking at that policy and seeing if it needs to be tightened up and rewritten, and then shared and discussed with all of your employees. It really is a topic that you should start talking about, because it's not going to go away, and it's going to get worse and worse. And we just get so busy with our day, as Ashley's story this time around and Matt's story last time. It's very easy to just get wrapped up in your work, and mistakes happen. But if you begin talking about security and really bringing it to people's awareness, the forefront of their awareness, it will help. It will make a difference. If you haven't had any discussions about security, you might want to consider adding this to a topic when you have meetings, staff meetings, firm management meetings, company meetings, anything. Just get the dialogue going and start making a plan. Training and awareness is extremely important. You can discuss security and write policy all you want, but if your employees don't know what to look for, someone inevitably will get tricked. So if you are considering some security training, please be sure to let us know. We can do training in-house. We can do remote sessions. Security training can be added to new hire training, and our sessions can be tailored to your own firm and company needs. So be sure to let us know if this is something you are interested in. It can be completely customized for your firm. And also, additionally, you may want to ask a WAMS engineer to audit some of your connections for proper security practices. Lastly, you may also want to consider moving your network to the cloud. Besides the convenience, cost, and continuity of a cloud network, they are also very secure. Now, there are many who still don't trust the cloud, and they believe that the cloud is less secure than data servers stored in your own office location. But in actuality, cloud networks are designed to make sure that data is secure and only available to you and your employees. Cloud service providers like ours provide data encryption so that when data is being transferred, it is very secure. The data on servers is also stored in very high security buildings where sophisticated security tools and antivirus software is in place. And a lot of money is spent on this when your network is moved to the cloud. Additionally, and lastly, cloud networks are also monitored 24/7 by real security experts. So if this is something that you and your company or firm are looking at, WAMS can definitely provide you with information.
Thank you, Kathleen. And once again, if you have any questions, go ahead and send them to info@wamsinc.com, and we will answer them in a timely manner. Now, we do wonderful training here, but if any of you are curious about what else WAMS can do to make your IT solution the best it can be, we provide managed services, cloud services, projects and consulting, security auditing and implementation, disaster recovery, and last but not least, training. Thank you again for joining us today, and be sure to join us next month on Wednesday, April 24 at 10 a.m. to learn about a new upcoming law that may affect your business in 2020.